Okay, so 4:10 p.m. on February 17th, 2021, calling to order the meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust for Easton, Massachusetts. Easton Affordable Housing Trust. Sorry, 4:10 p.m. We're a little out of practice here. Okay, so the first order of business is to review and accept the September 30th, 2020 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Can I
Yes.
make a motion to approve them?
Yes.
Someone to second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
And then we have to do a roll call vote,
Roll call?
unfortunately.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I found it's efficient if we just like call on people and then they state their last name and yes or no, and
Yep.
I can do that if that helps you, Nikki.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got Nikki, and then you'd say Dustumi and yes.
Justian, yes.
Amy,
Rodriguez, yes.
Chuck,
King, yes.
Stephanie,
Alves, yes.
thank you, and Ernso.
Stephen, yes.
Perfect,
Great.
thank you.
Okay, and then next up on the agenda is the major reason we're meeting today is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Wayne, I think you have an update, and we're going to be discussing the potential authorization of additional extensions.
Yes, very briefly, and it can get a little convoluted. So you remember that at June town meeting, folks approved $250,000 for emergency rental assistance. We contracted with a nonprofit group called Metro West Collaborative to qualify applicants and to administer the program. We did a first round, which was successful in late October, early November, and that was the point of our end of September meeting. We went to the select board and asked them to authorize expanding and extending the program for the full $250,000, which they voted to do. Based on that, we re-advertised, including sending a second notification of funding to all the landlords in Easton, and received 10 or so additional applications. And this also allowed us to add a second 3 months of assistance to folks already enrolled in the program. So that's brings us up to speed. I've been in touch with Metro West in the last week or two, and so applications have tapered off. We got 3 in January and none so far this month, and we're really not expecting any more. The understanding is we did such a good job with our outreach at the very beginning. We actually got almost all of the people who would be eligible or want to be enrolled in that first wave. So with all the funding and all the folks currently enrolled, and assuming the newer folks get a second 3 months, long story short, we'll have about 60 grand left. And so with that, a large number of households from that very first group of folks who applied still are in need, are still out of work due to the pandemic, and can still document pandemic-related income loss. So what Nikki and I have talked about, and what we're looking for at this meeting, is a vote to further extend the rental assistance program upon recertification for folks to receive an additional 3 months of rental assistance. This will allow us to use that remaining 60 grand to offer additional assistance to this first group of folks. And if everyone recertifies and enrolls, and if all the current folks who enrolled later get a second round of funding, we'll be able to fund 2 months for all 2021 folks from that very first group. There's sort of variables we don't know. will they all be able to recertify? Will they all want to? But assuming they all do and everyone currently enrolled gets a second round, we'll be able to offer 2 months of funding. So we're asking for, up to 3, because there will certainly be variables. Assuming a positive vote from this group this afternoon, this coming Monday, and Chuck may have seen the draft agenda, I don't know, we'll be taking this to the select board to approve it and to authorize the select board chair Dottie to sign a contract amendment. So that's kind of the state of play. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them the best I can.
The agenda usually comes out Thursday or Friday, Wayne.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Chuck. And Ernsto? Yeah.
Yes. Is that the 21 folks that you're talking about? The 21 family? Oh.
Yeah, it's households. Most of them have children. Some have elders. I think some may be just single individuals. So it varies.
Okay.
They're mostly families, but we use households because it's all sorts of different people.
Thank you.
Yeah. If no one has any other questions, perhaps we could have a motion and a second to extend the rental assistance grant program with remaining funds to allow up to an additional 3 months of funding upon income recertification.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy.
I can second that motion.
Thank you. And we can go around in circles again. Nikki,
Stumian, yes.
Amy,
Rodriguez, yes.
Chuck,
King,
okay. Stephanie,
Alves, yes.
thank you. And Ernsto?
Stephen, yes.
Okay, thank you. And Sam is
Isn't
here.
Sam is
That's
here,
great news. Sam?
I am here. Hell yes.
Woohoo!
And
Good to
I
hear from you.
apologize. I'm on vacation mode and I totally spaced it. Sorry about that.
Good for you. You
No
deserve it.
worries, yeah.
I'm making a note of what the vote was so I don't forget.
yeah, the feed has gotten a little bit choppy in the last couple of minutes.
I'm sorry.
I'm not seeing or hearing Chuck right now. I don't know. That's
I think his feed has slowed down on him.
okay.
Yeah. Which happens to me sometimes. And as I mentioned at the beginning, sometimes my sound just decides to disappear,
Yep.
which is
Well
awesome.
versed in the Zoom
Yeah.
glitches over here too.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.
Well, we can move on. The next thing is project updates. And starting with the home buyer assistance grant program. Wayne, did you already review that? Did we talk about that? Or maybe that was just on the
Matthew, yeah, you and I talked about that. And basically, I can just like read off the agenda and run through the project updates. Excuse me. So our home buyer assistance grant program, as folks remember, is a grant for first-time home income qualified first-time home buyers to buy a market rate house in Easton, which then becomes restricted affordable going forward. We had 2 folks enrolled in the program who tried for over 5 months to find something in Easton and were unsuccessful. So they've timed out of the program and they're looking at other options. As folks may be aware, the housing market in Easton has gotten incredibly expensive and very fast moving. So every remotely feasible, condo, folks get instantly outbid on, and it moves to sale, basically the next day. So I suspect during this very overheated local real estate market moment, we're not going to have a lot of successful participants in the program. So that's really the update. We slightly reworked it, you may remember, to clarify that it's you've got 140 days to actually close on a unit, and you could extend in writing at need, and that's to make sure that we don't have folks in there forever in case we get other applications that we want to consider. But as a realistic thing, I don't think we're going to have a lot of successful applicants in the very near future. So I think, and Nikki and I had chatted about this a month or two ago, this may be a somewhat quiet program that exists on the books without a lot of uptake and participation until such time as the real estate market becomes more favorable for folks to participate. So that's sort of the update on that. It's kind of disappointing, but I'm sure a lot of folks have seen what things are selling for these days, and it's really tough.
There's something creative we can do to revive that, right?
I don't
story and scripted, and
I don't think so. Because it's already a very high amount of money that's offered.
Mm-hmm.
The $95,000.
Yeah.
And the issue is people just getting outbid, and just the base price of a market rate, even a condo unit, being so high that can still be a stretch for people to get a mortgage for the remainder. So we may be seeing Easton turn into a very high real estate cost town where such a program isn't really feasible absent some sort of substantial reworking or massive increase in the grant amount, which may be something we could think about at a future meeting. And this sort of looks ahead, and we'll probably get to this later in the meeting if folks have time. We would want to be doing some strategic thinking about what we want to do as an affordable housing trust, and that's related to the new CPA application process. But we can get to that towards the end, and I can run through the other items. Okay, thanks. So 300 Foundry Street, that's the acquired brain injury group home with 8 bedrooms. Folks may remember that BAMC, Brockton Area Multi-Services, acquired it in January of 2020. They have finished their permitting, their wetlands permitting, conservation permitting, natural heritage endangered species permitting. They got their special permits for a duplex and for subdivision from the planning board. And they're looking to go ahead with construction this spring. Yeah, so all the permitting is done, and the sort of state of play is, as folks may remember, there's going to be a duplex with 4 bedrooms each, 8 bedrooms total, on the upland area at 300 Foundry Street. It's a 15.5-acre site. So the developed area is going to be about an acre and a half. And then the remainder of the site, 12 plus acres, is going to be donated to the town as conservation land. It's uplands and wetlands. So it's kind of a great outcome for the property, and encouraging that we've gotten through the permitting on this really difficult site. So that's a lot of work to get us here. Next up is 10 Electric Avenue. That's the Habitat for Humanity construction project. Folks may remember the Affordable Housing Trust worked for several years to acquire and then merge tax title parcels, and then issue an RFP for a nonprofit to develop it as affordable housing. The construction, of course, got delayed due to COVID. I believe Chuck and Ernso last fall were out there when Habitat restarted their big construction push. and they're making great progress. I think they've got at least plyboard roof up. You know, it's framed out. I haven't been by there in a couple of weeks, but it's coming along quite well. And then the following two kind of come together, 26 Quanticut Avenue and 10 Morse Road. These are two parcels that the trust acquired last spring, and I am still working on putting together the RFP and issuing the RFP for a nonprofit to respond to build 1 or 2 units of affordable housing on each parcel. And the trust is making grants available to help defray costs. One of the most likely respondents to an RFP reached out to let us know that they're overbooked right now, so there's no rush on their end in responding to an RFP. So, you know, we've got another month or two. But in any event, I intend to work on getting those drafted for review and approval by this group in the next month or two, and then we can go through the posting and publication and start moving on that with spring, now that things have maybe normalized a little bit in this sort of COVID and post-COVID world. So those are the updates on that, and happy to answer any questions, or we can like switch over to the next thing all about the CPA application. On to CPA.
I'm ready for the CPA.
Okay, so Nikki and I worked on the annual report for the Affordable Housing Trust. You'll be seeing that in the annual report ahead of town meeting, which is of course in May again this year. As you know, the Affordable Housing Trust is funded primarily by Community Preservation Act funds. Under the Community Preservation Act, it's a local option property tax, receipts from which can only be spent on open space conservation, creation of new active outdoor recreation opportunities, community housing, and historic preservation. And you have to use 10% for open space, 10% for community housing, and 10% for historic preservation. The remaining 70% can be allocated among any of those 3 uses. The Community Preservation Committee has reworked how they are soliciting and considering CPA applications. So they're not really doing CPA applications this year. There's only going to be a couple of them. And instead, what they are looking for is a letter of intent by mid-March, which then, working with town staff, applicants are invited to create a more detailed application for consideration in the fall and recommendation at the May 2022 town meeting. And what this is trying to get at is a number of construction projects the group has found need more guidance and support in getting plans and specifications and accurate budgets together so that they can in fact have a successful project. And the hope of this approach is that groups coming forward with these will get more support so that they can have more successful applications and more successful projects, and also that more volunteer-led grassroots local groups can participate. So that's why they're doing it this way. So what this does is it kicks the Affordable Housing Trust to 2 interesting things happening. So first up, and Nikki and I can work on this and submit a placeholder application or a placeholder warrant. So town meeting in May of 2021, you have warrants that town meeting votes on. The draft warrants are due this coming Monday, the 22nd. So we want to get our placeholder warrant article in there. The CPC said in previous meetings of theirs that they understand how the trust is funded, so we wouldn't necessarily need to skip getting funded this year. So I think what we should do is submit a request to the CPC for their consideration and hopefully endorsement for a town meeting warrant article this spring, May 2021, for that 10% set aside of CPA funds. And I reached out to the town accountant, and she says she estimates the 10% set aside will be $177,500. So if this sounds like a sensible approach, I don't think we need a vote, but sort of understanding and endorsement from the group for Nikki and I to work on a CPA fund application for that 10%.
What was our previous request?
We vary from year to year. Sometimes it's anywhere from 250 to 350. Some years it's less. Some years it's only been that 10% amount, which of course varies from year to year. We had indexed our ask, and this is actually a great segue. Thank you for that. We had indexed our ask in the past to, you may remember, we had that 5-year action plan.
I was just gonna,
And that's now expired by a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if we need to hire another consultant to produce one or if we want to do it in-house, but we should in the next several months have a sort of strategy conversation about what programs have been effective, what programs could be revised, what new larger projects we may want to affirmatively take on, and then sort of have that as a budget ask for successive years. So we could use this March 11 letter of interest deadline, and Nikki and I could put together there's like a little template, a 1-page template you fill out, and Nikki and I can put together something for that as a bit of a placeholder, and point to that the trust over the spring will be looking to do some more strategic planning on its priorities and what its annual budget request might be. And I don't know if we want to have that facilitated by a consultant again, or if we can do that in-house. It's not something we need to decide right now, but we might want to think about that. And sort of get together in a month or so and sort of game out meetings and how we want to tackle that. And then there's a related thing, not really part of this, but how can I put this without putting everyone straight to sleep? So in Massachusetts, there's 40B, which requires towns to have 10% of their housing units affordable to households making 80% or below the area median income. If you do not have that, developers can overrule your local zoning. You remain 40B compliant by making progress towards the 10%, or in Easton's case, actually being at and slightly over that 10%. And two things factor into that. First up is the decennial census. So of course the 2020 census, and I believe the more fine-grained numbers for municipal housing units. How many housing units do you have in town? And so that's officially recounted every 10 years. So Easton's recount is the 2020 census, and I believe those numbers will be available, I think, July of this year of 2021. So that's item first. So we're going to need new numbers. Our 10% is going to be different because we're going to have more housing units. Then somewhat relatedly, when the state certifies that a town is compliant with 40B, either making progress to the 10% or at the 10%, what they're actually certifying is the town's state-approved 5-year housing production plan. And folks may remember who've been with the group for a while that we hired a consultant. You really need to hire a consultant to do these. To do a housing production plan for Easton, and that expires in February of 2022. So, which is kind of a long and involved way of saying this summer we need to put out an RFP or this spring, we need to put out an RFP to get a consultant on board so that this fall we can get a housing production plan and get that submitted to the state over the winter so that we are set for the new census numbers and for having a state-approved 5-year housing production plan when ours expires next February. So again, that's not something we need to solve right this red hot minute, but I wanted to pop up and put that on people's radar.
So Wayne, I have a question. So the 177,000 that from the 10% that we might ask from the CPA. Do you have any sense as to what both of those projects will cost, the housing production plan and the 5-year action plan? I mean, will that cover it? With and then some, or
Oh, and then some. Yes, the housing production plan is the expensive one, and that was, I think,
20.
Yeah, it was like 16 or 19. Yeah, it was under 20.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
if we choose to hire, and there may in fact actually be planning department administrative funds that could help defray that cost, possibly.
Yeah.
Not all of it, but that could be an option. And then if we choose to hire a consultant, that would certainly be under 20.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
probably significantly under.
Okay. I mean, clearly the action plan, we just based on what you said about the changing real estate market and the fact that we've been really active in the rental assistance area as opposed to the grants for home ownership. It's really something that we do need to look at long term as to where we want to put our efforts. So definitely something to do.
Yeah, that can be a huge burden, but it is definitely something to talk about. Is that
talk about, right? Yeah. So.
Or do we want to, take a run at sponsoring another largish development similar to the acquired brain injury group housing? Do we want to do some other sort of supportive housing project? Or do we want to really expand on acquiring developable land for a nonprofit development? There's any number of ways to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something we should really think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, so as a recap, thank you. We've got a vote for the rental assistance. Thank you very much. I'll clean that up. And we've done the minutes. I've updated folks on our sort of current projects that we have chugging along. Nikki and I will work on a letter of interest on behalf of the trust for that mid-March deadline. And I can also draft up a warrant article in the next several days with Nikki's review, asking for that 10%, $177,500 in funds, and then that would also need to, I believe, be considered by the CPC at their March meeting, and hopefully they'll react favorably to that. But we can at least get that in as a placeholder, and then we can meet in another month or so, whenever we want to, start a more strategic conversation about, sort of gaming out what we want to get up to with ourselves in 2021.
I think that makes sense. Maybe you can look back to see who we used as the action plan consultant. I mean, I know it's 7 years ago, right? Is that
here's the scary part. I remember this.
I think I do too.
Our consultant for the action plan was Jennifer Goldson.
Yeah.
And for the housing production plan, it was a company called Community Opportunities Group.
Okay.
With their lead on that was a woman named Roberta Cameron, if that rings any bells. I think there may only
Can
be
we use them
actually
again?
2 of us. Roberta Cameron was the lead for a group called Community Opportunities Group, and they did the housing production plan about 5 years ago. And when we would look for a consultant for either of these, for the housing production plan, and should we choose to do another action plan, we would solicit for quotes, put up a little written solicitation, send it to all the likely suspects, document their response, their price,
Okay.
and then pick one.
You can just go ahead and we use them, no?
Yeah, we you have to go out for procurement. You've got to like ask around and document that you've asked other folks. But obviously folks who have successfully done work in the past are included on the list of companies that you
Okay.
solicit quotes from.
All right.
Yeah. And there's a sort of, I don't know how you put this. There's a collection of well-regarded and experienced consultant groups that do this sort of planning work. Theoretically, every municipality, all 351 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, should have a state-approved 5-year housing production plan. So, there's a group of folks who actually know how to do this. And I point to the utility of having a consultant do it because a lot of the numbers and analysis that back it up can get quite technical, and that's a skill set I myself don't have. A lot of it's based on metrics and numbers of expected growth and affordability and certain target populations like seniors or folks accessibility issues, that sort of thing. So it can get pretty fine-grained when we start to get into it. Yep.
Wayne, so the trust is definitely the board to spearhead the housing production plan, right?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so just based on what you were just saying, it's just with all the numbers and things, does it make more sense to do a housing production plan first and our action plan would come out of those numbers? Is that more?
It might. It
Yeah.
might, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
could one do a hybrid? And I don't know, but could one do a hybrid? Hey, we're doing a housing production plan. And could you do a 5-page document with an annual budget as an action plan for the trust?
Yeah, maybe. Right.
While you're here.
Yeah. Because it makes sense to have that information before we. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. What else do you need from us? Are we
All set.
You're good?
I'm good. I've got to gear up for a 6 o'clock meeting.
Oh boy.
Wait,
Yay.
wait.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted, this is just a personal housekeeping thing. When you took the vote earlier, I'll ask Nikki as well, was I included in the vote?
I put you down as an A. I heard you say King and you froze. And so I went out on a limb and assumed that you did vote yes.
Yeah, I didn't want to be here. Well, I won't say I didn't want to be here, period, but I didn't want to be here and not have my vote count. So it was an aye, yes.
It's
Thank you.
counted.
Yes, we got you. Yes, you have sat down and been counted. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm set. And thank you guys for being available on kind of a short notice scramble so that we get it ahead of the select board meeting next Monday. And if this works, a motion and a second to adjourn and a roll call vote. Do we have a motion?
I make
So
a motion to adjourn. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to say Amy moved and Chuck seconded to adjourn.
Yep.
Roll call vote. Nikki?
Just do me, yes. Thanks, everyone.
Amy?
Rodriguez, yes.
Chuck?
King, yes?
Stephanie?
Yes.
Thank you. Ernsto?
Steven, yes.
Thank you. And Sam? if she's checked out or still there.
She's muted.
She's muted and may be in the middle of something with a couple of active kids in tow. But we certainly have a quorum who have voted to adjourn.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, thanks everybody.
Wayne.
Really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
everyone.
Take care.
You well. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Bye.
Good job, everybody.
That's all.